The mass psychology of fear, next on One Nation. Hello, America. Welcome to One Nation. I'm your host, Dr. Jake Jacobs. Here we go again. The fearmongers are on steroids. Just recently, the Marxist head of the United Nations declared that it's no longer global warming, it's global boiling. Now, I want to run through quickly some headlines of just the last few months that are trying to scare the bejeebies out of the American people. In the month of July, we've only got it was the hottest month. July was the hottest month in 120 years. There's some other ones where the European Union says that we're in the midst of dire consequences because July was the hottest month ever recorded in not only human history, but going back 120,000 years. Right? And then look at the European Union. It's to the point now where the European Union is working with that nut job Bill Gates to actually block the sun. And you know who was going along with that? Is the President of the United States of America, Joe Biden. Look at this. The White House floats the idea of blocking out the sun. You can't make this stuff up, people. This is loonbird lefty climate boiling idiocy at its worst. Some people would say it's finest, but at its worst. So from climate to COVID, I would argue that this whole thing is all about the mass psychology of fear, of groupthink, of group fear, of group guilt. In fact, the Communist Chinese Party, I call the virus the CCP virus because they are quintessential, perfect Marxist propagandists who use the virus as the way to put fear not only into the people of Europe and of Asia, but of the United States of America. During the whole fiasco from day one, they lied to the American people. And the media, the Chinese propagandist media, was actually being used by the AP, Associated Press, and other media outlets in the United States. And they were all over the place with discombobulated disinformation and misinformation about masks and lockdowns and no alternative treatments. The moment Senator Ron Johnson of the great state of Wisconsin dared to have other doctors, other scientists, other experts mention, discuss, debate about other alternative medicines and therapies, they were attacked, they were maligned, they were ridiculed, they were called, science deniers, et cetera, et cetera. And it's unbelievable where Big Farm, Johnson & Johnson and Moderna and Pfizer, we know they're making literally millions and billions of dollars. We're demanding that people who would dare to discuss or debate other alternative viewpoints would be censored, would be shut down. I can remember when we were shut down, it was March 16th here in the state of Wisconsin of 2020. The reason I remember, I was all set to go to the local McGinnis Irish pub for a nice Guinness that day, but we couldn't go because everything was shut down. And they said it was only going to last, about 15 days. And then the next thing you know is there was all this fear about it being 3.4% mortality rate. It could get as high as, 4% mortality rate, and on and on and on. And then all of a sudden they realized, wait a minute, this is actually it's way less than 1% mortality rate. Some people from Stanford and other universities were saying it was as low as 0.2. But when you watch the media, they understood the mass psychology of fear. They wanted us to be afraid. So then the government mandates and dictates coming from, whether it be the president or coming from Governor Cuomo or Governor Whitmer of Michigan or Newsom of California, when they were telling us what we had to do, they ultimately were using it for control. Now, I have taught my students for years and years and years, going back to the 1970s, you need to trust but not verify. Trust but verify. You need to learn to discern the information that's out there. Don't be duped and fooled by the news media that's out there. Be aware of propagandists, their propagandistic agenda. Watchers beware. Listeners beware. I got to tell you what's beyond or underneath all of this is what I simply call the mass psychology of fear. the mass psychology of fear. More on the mass psychology of fear in a moment. Now, let me bring you back to that China virus time period in the world, in American history, where the media, utilizing the mass psychology of fear, was trying to make you and me scared so then we would follow like the sheeple everything they were telling us to do, where they were declaring in a cacophony of media madness, nobody is safe. Take a listen.
We want to make sure that people can discern the truth from the misinformation. And we want to make sure that everyone understands that no one's safe till everyone's safe.
No one is safe.
No one is safe.
No one is safe. No one is safe.
No one is safe.
Nobody's safe.
No one is safe.
Nobody is safe.
This is a post-9/11 axiom. Safer, but not yet safe.
No one is safe. No one is safe. No one is safe. No one is safe from COVID-19 until everyone is safe.
If the whole world isn't safe, none of us are safe.
No one is safe.
No one is safe.
Nobody is safe
until we're all safe.
Health experts have been saying nobody is safe.
Nobody is safe until everybody is safe.
Nobody is safe.
The science is clear.
None of us are safe.
There is no safety.
No one is safe.
No one is safe.
No one is safe.
No one is safe until everyone is safe.
No one's safe.
Nobody is safe. Nobody's safe.
No one's safe.
We'll never be safe
until we're all safe.
We are never going to be safe.
99.5% of people are safe and will survive COVID-19.
The only positive thing out of this is we should be able to manufacture a lot of vaccines, and
nobody will be safe if not everybody is vaccinated.
you don't have a choice.
As long as not everybody is vaccinated, nobody will be safe.
Normalcy only returns when we've largely vaccinated the entire global population.
Did you hear that? I mean, what I'm trying to get across here, people, is when this comes again, and I guarantee it's going to happen again, this UN World Economic Agenda of 2030 is all about vaccines and viruses and climate boiling to scare us. And we need now more than ever before to be watching Freedom Project Media and other shows so we can actually trust but verify, learn to discern. I would highly recommend this excellent booklet from American Opinion called COVID Lies. It's an excellent source that goes over the lies about masks and vaccine and social distancing, et cetera, et cetera. Now more than ever before, we need to be wise to what's happening when it comes to the disinformation and misinformation of the wokeocrats, the leftocrats. I mean, this is just unbelievable. The last thing they want you and me and the American people to do is actually to study, to investigate, to look into this information. When we did that, when Senator Ron Johnson did that, when you did that, when many of us did that, they began to attack us, to Saul Alinsky us, to try to destroy us, to make us look like buffoons, and that we didn't know what we were talking about. Let's listen to them saying that you shouldn't do your own research.
Idiots who think that they can do their own research. Don't do any of your own research.
Doing your own research is associated with conspiracy theory circles.
This go-it-alone approach, doing your own research, that can have serious consequences.
You should get prison time for even questioning the vaccines.
Can we all stop saying, I need to do my own research?
That phrase, do your own research, 4 words, 4 little words that are hurting America.
Doing your own research hurts America.
Everybody has a supercomputer in their hand that empowers them to do their own research, and that's the problem.
You must not do your own research.
I need to do my own research.
I don't understand what that means. I'm doing my own research.
You can't do your own research unless you're a scientist. Oh, do your own research.
Remember that, unless you're a scientist. Those so-called experts, technocrats who think they know so much that isn't so and have been wrong so many times. Dr. Fauci lied and gave us misinformation galore. Now, they not only told us we shouldn't do our own research, right? But they, in essence, said that if you and I were not vaccinated, we were the enemy. Remember, that's what governments love to do. Divide the people, segregate the people, have there be somebody within the masses, within the sheeple that are the enemy. Let's listen to how they called those of us who didn't take the vaccine the enemy.
You need to get vaccinated, and if you don't, you are going to die.
I know you're vaccinated. You're the smart ones, but you know there's people out there who aren't listening to God and what God wants. You know who they are.
The unvaccinated people.
My message to unvaccinated Americans is this.
If you are the unvaccinated, you are the problem.
You're the
Condemn them, shame them, blame them.
The only people that you can blame are the unvaccinated.
Frankly, we can't trust the unvaccinated.
They should not be part of polite society.
Lunatics who won't take COVID vaccines walking around lawfully unvaccinated? That's psychotic.
If you're willing to walk among us unvaccinated, you are an enemy.
You have no right not to be vaccinated.
You don't have the right to contaminate someone else.
You can't go around pointing a gun in somebody's face, which is what it is when people are unvaccinated.
They are all idiots and losers.
This is a real movement in this country against the unvaccinated.
Jennifer Aniston is cutting non-vaccinated people out of her life.
The unrepentant, unvaccinated.
They should be removed from the hospital.
Those who refuse to be vaccinated should be denied health care.
Vaccinated person having a heart attack? Yes, come right on in. We'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy, rest in peace, Wheezy.
Some doctors are saying they'll refuse treatment for people who choose not to get the shot.
Why are hospital and ICU resources going to them?
Morons who will not get the shot.
See that? And I got to tell you what, I had some friends or acquaintances who never talked to me again because I refused to get vaccinated. My wife being attacked at Target because she wasn't wearing a mask and the woman yelling out, "I'm doing this for you." It was unbelievable what happened during the China virus fiasco in the United States. Now, not only do they attack those who aren't vaccinated, they actually change the nomenclature, right? It's the COVID-19 pandemic, etc. Oh, no. It became the pandemic of the unvaccinated. Let's take a listen.
Back to our lead story, the pandemic of the unvaccinated.
The fact is, this is the pandemic of the unvaccinated.
Experts call it
Pandemic of the unvaccinated.
still a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
The disease of the unvaccinated.
It is the unvaccinated who are the problem. Period. End of story.
The unvaccinated also put our economy at risk.
This is a tyranny of the unvaccinated right now.
The unvaccinated, not the vaccinated, the unvaccinated. That's the problem. That's the pandemic of the unvaccinated.
Pandemic of the unvaccinated. All this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
The only pandemic we have is among the unvaccinated. Pandemic because of the unvaccinated.
When you get the vaccine, you will not die.
That's right. That's right. It's a simple, basic proposition. If you're vaccinated, you're not going to die.
If you're vaccinated, you don't have a risk. It's as simple as black and white.
You are not going to die if you are vaccinated. That's it, full stop.
You're unvaccinated, you're at risk. You're vaccinated, you're safe.
A majority of Americans dying from coronavirus are vaccinated. COVID-19 isn't a pandemic of the unvaccinated anymore.
We didn't really understand the fatality rate. We didn't understand that it's a fairly low fatality rate and that it's a disease mainly of the elderly, kind of like flu.
Unbelievable, people. When I was saying early on my other show, the Jake Jacobs Show, I was talking about this stuff. I was telling my students about this, saying this is a very serious flu. I wasn't downplaying it. And when I was actually having dialogue and discussion about alternative therapies, I was called, right, a denier, a person who's an idiot who doesn't understand science. Yeah, tell me about that 1976 during the swine flu fiasco by President Ford. And I took the shot and I got sick. And it was an absolute unmitigated disaster by the CDC and the United States of America. But I digress. Did you hear Bill Gates at the end? We didn't understand the fatality rate. Fairly low. Disease of the elderly. No kidding. Governor Cuomo was putting the elderly, sick people in with healthy people, and many people were dying. There were mistakes galore all over the place. And then he even said it was kind of like the flu. I'm not downplaying the China virus, but what I'm telling you is they were upplaying to have a mass psychology of fear, to have you and I go through governmental hoops so they could control us. And trust me, that was the preseason for what they have planned down the road. Now, the so-called experts and politicians who told you to not research, listen to what they declared about not getting the COVID, the COVID if you took the vaccine. Here goes.
You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Biden tests positive for COVID-19.
When people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected.
Dr. Fauci tests positive for COVID-19.
Vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick.
CDC director tests positive for COVID-19.
Get your vaccine.
Pfizer CEO tests positive for COVID. Pfizer CEO tests positive for COVID again. CDC director tests positive for COVID again. Fauci tests positive for COVID again. Joe Biden tests positive for COVID again.
Cases up 258%. The majority of these cases are among the vaccinated.
And this area is the most vaccinated part of Massachusetts.
So many fully vaccinated people are testing positive.
So people here are a bit angry.
We are all really concerned about what this means long term.
I was vaccinated and I got COVID, and almost everyone we know with vaccinations had at least one bout of it.
All the experts were wrong. These guys were sitting there pontificating and lecturing us and telling us that nobody's safe unless you do exactly what we do. I had friends of mine die in the hospital. In fact, a dear friend of mine who could never see his wife again but through a window because of the ridiculous so-called expertise that was going on across this country. It was absolutely disgusting. Now, let me ask you this. How is it that these politicians and so-called experts were able to convince millions and millions of people in the United States and throughout the world to actually follow their so-called advice? Well, let's go back to 1895. A brilliant thinker, psychologist by the name of Gustave Le Bon. He wrote a couple of books, one called The Crowd and another one called The Psychology of Revolution. I discuss some of this in my book, Mob Rule. But within his book, he deals with the mass psychology of fear, where government leaders and so-called experts will, in essence, tell you, give you a narrative, design a narrative, that if it bleeds, it leads, and it allows them to, in essence, tell you what to do, where to go, and how to go about doing it. And in essence, it gives them the ability to manipulate and control you. In fact, I just got done reading this excellent book, The Psychology of Totalitarianism. I think we have a pic of it here. The Psychology of Totalitarianism by Dr. Matthias Desmet. Now, what Matthias does, along with the teachings of Le Bon and others, is he says that, in essence, the manipulation of masses for control comes through mass psychosis. It comes through the average person living their lives and thinking that, bottom line is that government officials and so-called experts would never do anything to harm us, that they always have our best interest at heart. But people like Sigmund Freud, who I'm not a big fan of, but others like Carl Jung, who I am a big fan of, and many other experts have in essence studied the group think, mass psychosis, mass psychology, and they in essence talk about how political leaders and experts love to use emergencies. And this is what I'm reminding you of. Emergencies are coming down the road, I guarantee it. It'll be another virus. It'll be something related to the bogus climate boiling charges that are out there. It'll be whatever it is done, proclaimed by the experts, like a Nancy Pelosi claiming they saved the planet when they were spending $1 trillion on the Inflation Reduction Act. I mean, she had the hubris to say that she was saving and save the planet. This is what I'm talking about. These megalomania political leaders manipulating you through the mass psychology of fear so you do things to follow them. So in essence, they can do away with democratic processes and gain more control. One classic example is in Weimar Republic in Germany in 1933. When Hitler burned down the Reichstag and blamed it on Jews and communists, he declared the Enabling Act of 1933. It was emergency powers. It was rule by diktat, the dictator Adolf Hitler. There were no more political parties, and the mass psychology of fear had the German people in essence say, we must obey, mein Führer, and obey they did, leading to the ovens of Auschwitz and Treblinka and Sobibor and on and on and on. Now, I am not saying that it's going to be like a Joseph Stalin type or Adolf Hitler type. I'm not saying Klaus Schwab and Guterres of the United Nations, these Marxist fools of the World Economic Forum, are somehow like a Joseph Stalin or an Adolf Hitler. But what I'm telling you now is these so-called individuals, these technocrats within the administrative bureaucratic state, from the United Nations, the European Union, the World Economic Forum, the WHO, who is in cahoots with the Communist Chinese, by the way, the CDC, the White House, and the media individuals, these technocrats. You know, these are scientists and engineers and PhDs who think they know so much it isn't so, that will give advice to the President of the United States, and they will say, we must declare a state of emergency to save the planet or save us from the virus. Now, by the way, these technocrats, people like Parag Khanna, he wrote a book in 2017 called Technocracy in America. This Parag Khanna, who thinks that people like Ross, I was just going to say Ross Perot, he kind of reminds me of Ross Perot, but like Dr. Anthony Fauci, right? That people like him are going to save us, right? So here he is saying the pandemic proves only technocrats can save us. Now stop and think of it. I showed you a picture of technocrats, that Technocrat magazine that came out in 1933 in the beginning of the Great Depression, where these technocrats says we can actually have a revolution without bloodshed. We will use man's mind, man's technology to save us from the sun or save us from the virus, whatever it may be. But I'm here to tell you right now that what they're about is actually circumventing our federal constitutional republic under God, denying the democratic processes, unelected administrative bureaucratic technocrats telling our political leaders what to do, how to do it, and thinking that you can trump the rule of law. We must now more than ever before trust but verify, learn to discern, be aware that there are nefarious individuals out there from Harvard and Yale and the so-called experts at MIT and the so-called lifer politicians like Joe Incompetent Biden, who's held on puppet strings, being manipulated by the Obaministas, and these individuals once again preparing us for another cataclysmic, apocalyptic, doom and gloom event that's around the corner. And I thank God that, we're in soft totalitarianism right now. Because if we were in hard totalitarianism, Freedom Project media wouldn't exist. You wouldn't even be watching this. So thank God within our soft totalitarianism era in American history, we have the availability of alternative media so we can actually learn to discern, trust but verify. Cut through all this, what do they call it? Legend, is it called Legend Media? Legion Media? What's it called again? Producer Mike, do you know offhand? Anyways, the term is a generic term for this left-wing propagandistic media that's out there. They're activists. They have an agenda, an ideological agenda. We see all around us the long arm of the central government ignoring the Constitution, the rule of law within our federal republic. The democratic process and the manipulation of the psychology of fear, mass psychosis, utilization, so-called emergencies like COVID and climate boiling, and any other issue that gives them more control within the deep state, the deep swamp. We need to learn to discern, to study. Be aware of what you hear the politicians, the media, the propagandists, and the technocrat experts who think they know so much that isn't so. Be aware of it. Blow them out of the water. And I'll close with the words of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. I will not comply. I will not lie down. I will not go quietly. I will not submit. I will not roll over, and I will not shut up.